Hey there again. It's been a while since I've updated on the status of the motel. That's mostly because there really hasn't been anything to talk about. It's just been the usual kind of weirdness. Smiley's been paying us some visits from time to time. The people coming by to stay have been pretty average level of weirdness. All in all, it's been fairly uneventful. Since the strange God came by telling me that I'm destined to purposely end life as we know it. Which still confuses me. I would get it if he told me that I accidentally did it, but doing it intentionally sounds like way too much effort. But to be fair, I feel like what's needed to constitute as weirdness has changed drastically since then. Like how a few days ago, a guy came to stay at the motel, and it took until the end of our interaction to realize how strange it was that he had 4 eyes, 2 normal eyes, and 2 more coming out of his temples. So maybe some strange events have been happening that I could turn into an interesting story, but I just haven't been clocking them as weird. But enough about that. I have a story to tell tonight. Or today, just depends on when you read this. I yawned as I opened my email. The sun, while setting, was still beating down heavily on me. I was bored, as again, nothing interesting has been happening. So I pulled out my phone and started looking through my emails. As soon as I did, a low rhythmic humming sound started. It sounded similar to when someone tries talking underwater. That doesn't make any sense. There's no water around here deep enough for that. I decided to just ignore the strange hum for now. If it was a big enough issue, I'm sure it would become very apparent, as it always does. I was doing a quick scan of my emails, hoping something would stand out. After scrolling for a moment, I found something interesting. A subject line that only read, "Run." The hums were closer, louder now. They almost sounded annoyed, almost angry sounding. The sender's name was just absolute nonsense. My finger hovered over it. The humming grew louder and louder as I contemplated opening it. I don't know why I was hesitating. Something about opening this email felt like it was opening a much bigger can of worms than I was ready for. I tapped the email, opening it. Before I had the chance to see its contents, I was smacked on the back of the head. I turned around to see Court standing behind me, looking very annoyed for some reason. She opened her mouth to talk, but no words came out, just a muffled sound that I had been hearing earlier. "Oh, wait." I took my earplugs out and asked, "What's up?" She huffed, perturbed by something. We got the guy. We've been trying to get your attention for almost a minute, and now I know why we couldn't. 'Cause you're a moron." It would have hurt if I knew she meant it. Maybe she did mean it, but it was only because she seems really upset right now. I looked past her to see Anna standing next to Liam Kurtneck, the man who, about 4 hours ago, threatened to blow up the motel. He came by about midday, right at the beginning of my shift. While I was ringing him up, he seemed nervous. There wasn't anything too strange about him, other than the fact that he was wearing a jacket and jeans on a day that was around 90 degrees. Liam was sweating profusely, and when I asked him why he was dressed so inappropriately, he told me to mind my own business. So I did. I gave him his room key and let him into the gates. Not 10 minutes after letting him into his room, he calls the front desk. "Hello?" I asked when I answered. "Mason," Liam started, "listen to me, and listen well. I'm strapped with enough explosives to bring this whole goddamn building down. If you don't want me to—" "What kind of explosives?" I interrupted. What? "What kind of explosives? You packing C4, some type of grenade, or did you swing for a more classic red stick of dynamite?" "Is that really important?" Liam asked, sounding very annoyed. Which I would feel bad about how many people I've ticked off today, but he is threatening to blow us up. It would really help me know how serious to take this. He sighed into the receiver. "Fine, turn around." I did as instructed and turned to look into his room. He was on the second floor in room 17. He was standing by the window waving around a fistful of what looked like sparklers. And not like those heavy-duty ones that can actually start pretty big fires. These were the ones that you'd hand out to kids on the 4th of July. Oh, so not at all then. "Now, here are my demands," Liam started. "I want $100,000. Then I'm going to need—" "Mind if I put you on hold?" I interrupted again. Are you serious?" "Oh yeah, it'll just take a few minutes, I promise." "I mean, I guess. I've got nothing else to do today." "Fantastic." I put him on hold and called the owner. Not because I'm actually worried about any kinds of damage he could cause, but more because I'm not sure if we could get in any kind of legal trouble for ignoring bomb threats. She answered almost immediately. After a moment of exchanging pleasantries, I explained the situation. She immediately demanded that I do whatever he asked. call the police, whatever I need to do to get him to leave without causing any damage to the motel. She was so adamant about it that I decided it would be easier to handle Liam, or call someone else to handle Liam, than trying to convince her that there's nothing to worry about. She thanked me for my hard work and hung up. I took Liam off hold and said, "Sorry, Liam, got one more call to make." I heard him yell, "Fucking what?" before he was back on hold. I called the police station directly, due to the lack of cell service around these parts, and that we're both on landlines. I quickly explained the situation, and I was told that someone would be sent out to handle it. I unholded. That's a word now. Liam. "Hey, I'm back." "What the hell have you been doing? I just threatened to blow you up and you put me on hold?" Liam shouted into the phone, loud enough that everyone on the property could hear his voice. Thankfully, that was just me and one other person. I opened my mouth to respond to what Martina called from across the snack bar. "Mason, what the hell is that douche yelling about?" "Give me a sec," I said to Liam. "What the f—" I put him back on hold, but he was screaming so loud I could hear him finish his sentence. "He's threatening to blow us up," I yelled back to Martina. "Oh? How serious are we taking this?" "Not at all. His explosives are sparklers." "Okay, good to know." She went back to playing games on her phone after that. I unholded Liam again. "Hey, I'm back. I promise you have my full attention now." "Promise?" he asked in a soft voice. "Yes, Liam, I promise." "Thanks, buddy." "Don't mention it." "Now, here are the rest of my demands." Right then, a police cruiser pulled over in front of the motel. Court and Anna stepped out. That was fast. "I'm gonna have to stop you right there, Liam," I said and put him on hold again. "You liar!" he screeched as I put him on hold once again. "What's the situation?" Court asked while I moved to let them in the gates. "Didn't they explain anything when they sent you this way?" I asked. "No," Anna started. "We were already on our way out here when we got the call. All we were told was to hurry." I explained the entire situation again. Once I was done, they walked over to his room's door and started talking to him through it. After a few minutes of that, it just turned into a screaming match between Liam and Court. After the first hour of this, I got pretty bored, so I put in my trusty pair of earplugs, excellent for blocking out my barking plans and the screams of terrorists. The hours started rolling by before they eventually got him out of his room. "How'd you get him to come out? Or did you break in the door to get him?" I asked, thankful that the situation had been dealt with. "He tried lighting the sparklers but couldn't get his match to ignite," Anna said. "So I offered to light it for him, as a joke, and he took the offer. Just opened the door for us to come in." She finished with a smile that held pride and amusement. "Oh. Well, that's not how I expected this to end." "And now that it has ended," Court started, "I'm ready to get home and get out of this uniform. It's hot as balls out here." Taking that as my cue to open the gate, I turned away from them and started fiddling with the lock. "I don't really get that expression," I said. "Balls aren't that hot." My voice trailed off as something caught my attention. Down the road, making its way towards town, a large, purple fog, crawling its way across the ground towards us. Fast. It went as far as the eye could see in either direction. I knew that this purple smog had already encircled the entire town. It stretched from the ground up at least 10 feet. I spun around and yelled, "Everyone, get to a room on the second floor! Hurry! Martina, grab as many snacks as fast as you can!" Everyone turned to see what I had been looking at, and immediately went into action, except for Martina, who yelled back, "Why? What is that?" "No time to explain, just hurry!" I yelled as Court, Anna, Liam, and I were running across the lot with a manic energy. The four of us were filled with what I could only describe as a primal fear. We knew the danger coming our way, and our instincts took over. Martina acknowledged the urgency in my voice and started shoveling our off-brand candy bars and chips into her shirt, using it like a bowl. Once the four of us had passed by the snack bar, Martina followed behind us as we all sprinted up the stairs. We went to the first door, the one right above the snack bar, the one that had just so happened to have been Liam's. Anna tried turning the doorknob, but it was locked. "The key! It's in my pocket!" Liam announced. Court quickly fished it out of his pocket and passed it to Anna, who unlocked the door as fast as she could. Once the door was open, we practically all fell inside. I slammed the door shut behind me, and just in time too. The purple smoke filled the lot and all the surrounding area. It billowed high enough that it was just under the second story. Looking at it from the inside of the room made it look like we were flying just above the clouds in a plane. "Okay," Martina poured the contents of her shirt onto the bed. "Can somebody please tell me what the hell that is?" The four of us, who knew all too well what was happening, all shared a look of understanding at the current situation. A second of silence passed through the room before I spoke up with an explanation. Every couple of years, seemingly at random, this fog will roll through town. The only consistency in when it appears is after 7 years and before 10 years have passed. The only consistency in when it appears is after 7 years and before 10 years have passed. And as far as people know, it's been showing up like this for almost a century. Everyone who's lived here long enough knows to stay out of it. This is the third one we've lived through, Anna said. Okay, so what was all the panic for? Martina asked. What happens if we're out in it? All the skin, muscle, and organs in your body will burn away, Court said, a look of gloom coming over her face. It's almost like a cloud of acid, I said. Oh, well, how long is it going to be here? How long are we trapped here for? Martina asked. 4 days. It's the most consistent part of this whole thing. It always stays for 4 days after it shows up. I looked out at the crawling cloud. 4 days? We're trapped in here for 4 days? That's why I asked you to grab all that. I gestured to the small supply of food on the bed. You know, Court leaned against the wall by the window, letting herself slide down until she was sitting. The worst part of this is that not everyone takes it seriously. You walk through the town after the fog passes, and at least 2 or 3 houses have had their windows smashed. The families in those homes rarely make it. After that, we took stock of our supplies. 9 candy bars, 4 bags of chips, 2 full rolls of toilet paper, 2 small bottles of shampoo, conditioner, and body soap. Only 1 bottle of hand soap, 2 glass cups, a notepad, a pen, Liam's sparklers, and our phones. Thankfully, I had my charger in my pocket. Now you're all pretty caught up to where we are now. Currently, the 5 of us are sitting in a circle playing D&D. I ripped up a paper to make character tokens and tore pages out and drew circles on them to make tiles. Martina and I helped the others make character sheets on their phones and use online dice for all the rolls. I've been typing this all up throughout the night, but I've had a lot of time to write this down while they debate whether to kill a little girl with a chainsaw. The little girl has the chainsaw. Just thought I should clarify, because thinking about the situation the other way is just... no. We can let her go, she's just a kid. She didn't know what she was doing, Anna said. No, Liam declared. She came at us and lost. By my honor, I must take her life. Liam seemed really into the roleplay aspect of this game, or at least I think he's roleplaying. I agree, Court said. In this world, only the strong survive. If we don't kill her, the zombies will get her eventually. We could use her as bait and keep the chainsaw, Martina threw out. The other 3 turned to look at her. That's fucked up, Liam said. Did you say that in-game? Martina asked. No, that's messed up. That was in-game. Henry Clayfield, his character, would never curse in front of a child, he stated like it was obvious. We had made a group vote if we should leave Liam cuffed or not. Unanimously, we agreed that it would be better for all of us if he stayed constrained. Martina helped him move his character across the board and took care of basically everything he needed to play the game with us. Cora had almost immediately decided to strip off her uniform, saying that she'd be more comfortable in her undershirt. Anna tried to stay professional, thinking that she should be in her uniform while we had a criminal with us, but gave in after a few hours, deciding that comfort was more important in the situation. A sound caught my attention. I couldn't tell what it was. It was just loud enough for my ears to register it, but not enough for me to be able to clearly make it out. I looked out the window, knowing that's where it had come from. Did you guys hear that? I asked. The party stopped arguing and turned their attention to where I was looking. I don't hear... Anna stopped herself as the sound became more audible. It sounded as if someone was walking across the metal walkway on the 2nd floor, dragging its feet the entire time, coming from the far end and coming our way. I thought nothing could be out in this, Martina whispered. Nothing can, Court whispered back. The dragging gait of whatever this was continued, closer and closer, almost agonizingly slow. My eyes instantly checked the doorknob. Thankfully someone had thought to lock it earlier. But my mind flashed back to a few months ago when the locked door seemingly just fell open on its own. Liam, I whispered, come here. I stood and walked over to the door, taking a seat right in front of it. Liam stood and followed me over. I patted the floor next to me. Thankfully he understood the universal motion for sitting and did so. This way, if the door decides to open itself, we'll be here to hold it closed. At this point, the footsteps were passing by the door. I let out an internal sigh of relief, which turned out to be a bit preemptive, as the sound stopped right outside our window. Thankfully, the blinds were pulled shut. Slam! We all jumped as what sounded like someone slamming their full weight into the window boomed through the room. I felt Liam's breathing quicken next to me, while the others slowly calmed down. But that's only because they couldn't see what Liam and I could. From where we were sitting, we could see behind the blinds. and what we saw probably would have made them as freaked out as Liam was becoming. I could feel him start to shake with fear. We saw what looked like the silhouette of two large hands pressed against the glass, and for the briefest of moments, I thought I saw what looked like a face pressed against the glass before it pulled away. The dragging sound continued, becoming fainter and fainter before completely vanishing. Liam and I spent the night sleeping against the door, hoping that if whatever mysterious force had caused the door to open, our body weight would be enough to keep it closed. Or on the slight chance that this creature had the ability to pick locks, it would wake us up. Thankfully, the creature has yet to display any lock-picking capabilities, and after I went on its little stroll across the second story, nothing else of note happened for the rest of the night. I woke up early and took a look out the window, taking in the sea of smog. It looks similar to how people describe being on a plane as it flies over a cloud, but instead of nice white fluffy clouds, it's a desolate, smothering, dark purple. On a lighter note, Anna just had to help Liam use the bathroom, so that provided a good bit of levity. "What was that?" Martina asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. I tried sleeping the blink out of my eyes, because, surprisingly, sleeping against the door doesn't provide the best rest. After the creature showed up and Liam and I moved to block the door, we had remained completely silent for the rest of the night, and had just tried to get some sleep. I started, have no idea. I stood and started stretching. "Thanks, Mason," she replied. "You're welcome." "Does anyone know what that was?" The silence that followed her question was enough of an answer to tell her that no one here had any idea what was going on. "I thought that nothing could survive out there," she questioned. "Well, that's what we thought, until last night," Anna said. "Whenever we find someone outside after the fog comes, they're very dead. People, animals, it doesn't matter," Court added. "Yep, that's why we're going to stay right here," Liam started, as we fell face first onto the bed. "And relax." I couldn't disagree with him, even though I really didn't want to admit that the guy that came here to blow up the motel with a pack of sparklers was right, because we're trapped here until the smog passes. I was about to tell everybody that we should start showering, because there's not a whole lot else to talk about, and we were starting to smell, and I wanted to snip that problem immediately. But the sound of a siren stole our attention. Our heads all turned towards the town, where the sound was coming from. I couldn't tell what kind of siren it was, because it was too far away, but after a moment of listening to it, I realized that wouldn't be an issue for long. I could tell from the looks on everyone's faces that they had the same thought I did. The siren was coming towards us. "You know," Martina started, "the longer this goes on, the less I'm sure it's actually dangerous, because it seems pretty busy out there." This was unexpected. The previous times this had happened, I had heard nothing. I had overheard stories of people hearing cars driving through town before the windows were shattered. I hadn't believed any of them, though. They always tried to make it out that there were gangs that would go around in the smog and break into houses. But that was stupid, considering that it was a flesh-devouring smog, so anything caught out there would die. Granted, all of this is happening. Would I survive? I've been poisoned before and it didn't do a whole lot. I stamped at the sudden urge to test it by flashing back to the pictures of corpses left by the smog. The schools thought it was necessary to show all the students images of what happens to people when they go out during these times, which I thought were fascinating, but some people thought were a little gross. I used to think that it was a bit unnecessary to show kids such graphic images, but then I realized how stupid people, especially in this town, are. The siren continued to grow louder and louder as it came closer. "Oh, it's a police My train of thought was cut off by an explosive crash, loud enough that I could feel it in my chest. There was a long, drawn-out moment of what sounded like metal screeching against metal, and then it stopped. There was a heavy silence over the five of us as we all waited for something to happen. Because let's be honest, something always happens after a silence like this. The sound of someone making a mad dash up the stairs rang out. Anna and Cor immediately sprang into action, drawing their guns and jumping across the room to pull the blind shut. Without making a sound, Anna ushered Liam and myself away from the door. Cor took a position right against the door, looking through the spy hole, or peephole, or peek hole, or whatever kind of hole you want to call it. Whatever was out there slammed against the door ferociously and started pounding on it. "Let me in," a voice on the other side of the door croaked. It sounded like a man that had been stranded in the middle of the desert for weeks. With how hard he was trying to get in here, it was like this door was the only thing between him and the first step of water. Anna stayed between us normal citizens and the door, keeping her weapon trained up to the ceiling. As the pounding continued, Court's whole body went rigid before she started to shake. We all stood there, unsure of what to do. The longer we waited, the harder she shook. Anna crept forward and put a hand on Court's shoulder. "Court?" she said, barely loud enough to count as audible. No response. "Court!" Anna whispered a little louder this time, giving her shoulder a gentle shake. No response. "Court!" Anna said, ignoring all attempts to be quiet, worry plain in her voice. She pulled Court away from the door, who turned to face the rest of us. She had a mixture of fear and sadness. Tears were threatening to start pouring, and it looked like she was fighting to hold herself together. She shook her head and ran, pushing past all of us to get to the bathroom. She slammed the door shut behind her. The toilet lid was thrown open, slapping against the back of the toilet as she started vomiting. "Oh God, I can't handle the sound of someone throwing up," Liam said as he started gagging. Anna looked back and forth between the bathroom door and the exit door. "Mason," she said, turning to me. "That's me," I said. "Do you think the door will hold?" I thought about it before giving my answer. I've never seen someone break them down, so they should hold, but they apparently sometimes just fall open. Granted, that could just be the one room, but you never know. She politely let me finish before saying, "Please keep her from doing that. I'm gonna go check on her." She walked to the bathroom and entered, closing the door behind her. Martina and I walked up to the door while Liam had his head buried in a small garbage can, dry heaving. As soon as I pressed my eye against the spy hole, the pounding stopped. The creature, whatever it was, stepped away from the door. While I was looking at it, I had no idea what I was seeing. It appeared to be a man made of smog. I couldn't make out any defining features about it, if it had any to speak of. The fog started thinning in certain spots, and at the time I thought I realized why Cora had reacted the way she had. I would find out shortly after that, but it was much worse than I had originally thought. In the spots where the smog was thinning, I could make out a body. The body of a person. It must have been out there for some time, because the skin had already been severely eaten by the toxic cloud clinging to its skin. On the few bits of its body I could see, muscle tissue was exposed. Whatever the creature is, looked around frantically before pounding on the door one last time. After that, it moved out of sight of the spy hole. I could hear its feet pounding against the metal walkway as it sprinted back down the stairs, letting out a hoarse, throaty screech as it did. Then silence. "Well, what was it?" Martina asked. Liam gagged. I took a step back from the door. It looked like a person was out there, like they were wrapped in the smog. Liam gagged. "So people can survive out there in the fog." Liam gagged. "I mean, be out there, yes. Survive, no. It looked like a walking corpse." "Oh. Well, now I'm just..." "Liam! You either need to throw up or shut the fuck up!" Martina screamed at him as he was mid-gag, then went silent and pulled his head out of the garbage can. "You could try being nicer to people in distress," Liam complained. Martina flipped him off. "As I was saying, well, now I'm just more confused by the situation. Has anything like this happened before? Has anyone ever started to slowly melt, get in a police cruiser, crash into the motel gate, and then survive long enough to demand entry? Usually not in that order." The bathroom door opened as Cora and Anna stepped out. Court's eyes were red and puffy, but the look on her face was now one of anger. She sat at the end of the bed, mulling over her words, keeping her eyes on the floor until she eventually spoke. "That person out there? The one in the fog? That's my dad." We all stayed there waiting for her to continue, remaining in a heavy silence. Only now am I realizing how often the people here are stunned into silence. Her dad had been a police officer up until 8 years ago. That was when the smog had last been here. From what Cora had told me, she and her family were doing what everyone had been told to do: stay on the second floor until all of this was over. Unless your house was airtight, it would find a way to leak in. On the third day, though, they heard a window shatter downstairs. Her dad went to see if he could tell what had happened, but he never came back. She believed that he had somehow fallen into the smog, even though that theory didn't account for his missing uniform. She bit her bottom lip nervously, keeping her eyes glued to the floor. When he was knocking on the door, some of the mist moved, showing his face. I immediately thought that was him, but I couldn't be sure because his face was pretty decayed, like something out of a zombie movie. But then, I noticed he was wearing an officer's uniform. He has my dad's badge number. She stifled her tears. "Well, that's a bummer," Liam said. I was already sad that I had to stay here with you guys. We all chose to ignore Liam, except for Anna, who was giving him a glare that would kill most people. How could this happen? If this stuff kills people and he's been in there for years, how could he still be alive? Martina asked. I don't know, Court said, but I really don't care. Like I said, he looks like a zombie, so I doubt he's alive. So we should just keep doing what we're doing. Just stay here until all this passes through. And if he comes back, we just ignore him. The last part looked like it hurt her to say. And even someone as dense as me could see that she was just trying to be tough and pretend like this wasn't hard for her. For the rest of the day, we heard him occasionally come back up and down the stairs. Whenever he'd pass by, we'd hear him mumbling, "Let me in. Let me in. Let me in." Whenever he'd pass by, we'd do whatever we could to distract ourselves. But as the day drew on, we quickly started getting bored. But as Anna kept reminding us, if we're bored, that means we're safe. And I found myself being more and more thankful that I started this blog, because it helps give me something to do while being quarantined in here. I don't like that, Martina whispered to me. She stood above me looking out the window while I watched Court and Liam play tic-tac-toe. Court would mark down for him wherever he told her to, unless it was about to result in a win, in which case he would mark the wrong square. This made him lose every single time, and every time he did, he'd throw a tantrum. Then he'd calm down, ready to play again. He was surprisingly good at the game considering how bad he seems to be at the rest of his life. What is it? I asked. It's him. Explanation, please? Well, last time he was up here, I watched him walk down into it. I was just curious to see what he was up to, because I thought that it was weird that he kept coming up here, so I thought that he might be up to something. Okay. When he walked down into the purple funky stuff, it started moving all weird like that around where he was. Well, if he is plotting something, hopefully he isn't working on it too quickly, because this is almost halfway over. At this point, the sun was starting to set on our second day of quarantine. You know, unless this lasts longer than usual, because there's apparently a lot of differences between this one and previous times. Okay, but why are you like this? I thought it was funny. It probably would have been if we weren't all cramped in this tiny room. As we were looking out at the smog, a strange feeling popped into my brain, like your subconscious knows something's off, but your conscious brain is trying to figure out what that thing is. Like your subconscious knows something's off, but your conscious brain isn't sure what that off thing is. What, aren't you enjoying our 4-day slumber party? Well, there are definitely enjoyable parts. I gestured to where Liam was currently throwing another tantrum because of another loss. But like my bed. Oh, that's what's wrong! The realization of what had been amiss dawned on me. That was a terrible transition. Care to explain what else is wrong now? I turned around, still on my knees to address the whole room. Hey guys, the smog is rising. They all turned to look at me. Are you serious? Court asked. How much higher? Court and Anna came to stand next to us at the window. They both looked out. You sure you're not just going crazy? It looks exactly the same to me. Yeah, I'm not sure there's a difference, Anna added. Well, at least this morning, the smog was just under the walkway. Now it looks like it's about to spill up onto it. The three of them all continued staring until Anna said, Oh my gosh, you're right. It's higher. Just a little, but it's definitely higher. What should we do? Martina asked. I think it would be best if we stay here and just monitor it. I know it'll be dangerous if it rises too much higher and starts leaking in here, but we also can't risk going out with that thing out there, Court finished. We should take turns on watch throughout the night. If at any point we notice that it's still rising, we'll have to find a way to get higher. Mason, is there any way onto the roof? I looked around trying to think of a helpful answer. We could put the nightstand outside and use it to climb up there. They gave me blank looks. Well, I guess if it's our only option. Court cleared her throat. We should probably get some sleep as soon as possible. We'll split the watch in two. One will be me and Anna, the other will be you two. She gestured to Martina and myself. Hey, what about me? Liam whined. You're an idiot and I don't trust you. Now who wants to take first watch? We'll take it, Martina offered. Right, Mason? Right, I nodded, taking notice of how obviously drained Court looked. She nodded and started getting ready to sleep. Once herself and Anna were under the sheets, Anna looked to me. Wake us up in about 5 hours so we can take over. Martina and I nodded, then they went to sleep. Liam curled up on the ground and closed his eyes, trying to get some sleep too. We sat by the window as the hours ticked by, just talking and trying to keep each other awake. And sitting there reminded me of the only good parts of the virus's visit. How quiet it is. On any other late night shift here, cars would come passing by in both directions, usually filled with stupid kids who are obnoxiously loud. But right now, it's just peacefully quiet. As we were talking about pretending to go on vacation after a 4-day straight shift, something out of the corner of my eye stole my attention. The thing that had been predating all day was slowly walking across the walkway right over to the window. It took a seat right across from me, just staring. "Well, that's fucking creepy," Martina whispered. The smog curled around his body, but the longer it sat there, the more it fell away, revealing more of the corpse. The bottom of his jeans and the end of his sleeves had been eaten away. Spots of skin looked like it had been peeled away, while small holes were visible across his arms and legs. His mouth kept opening and closing as if he was speaking, but he was either speaking so softly that he wasn't audible through our paper-thin walls, or he was just mouthing words. He didn't stay long, though. After half an hour of mumbling, he stood up and took his leave. Not long after that, it was time to wake up Cora and Anna. We told them what happened, but they didn't really know what to make of it. So now it's my turn to sleep in a bed, which I think is a pretty good spot to stop this post. So I'll talk to you all again soon. Someone was vigorously shaking me. "Mason!" Cora was yelling in my ear, a sense of urgency in her voice. "Martina, wake up!" I felt her shaking Martina on the bed next to me. I heard Anna waking up Liam on the other side of the room while I tried to wake up my struggling brain. I pushed myself up so I was sitting. "What's happening?" I asked groggily. "The fog is rising," Anna answered, while she uncuffed Liam for the first time in nearly 2 days. He rubbed his wrist and then sprung over to the garbage can where his fire sparklers were at. He snatched them up right as Cora pulled out her handgun and aimed it at him, which seemed to be a bit of an overreaction considering, they're just fire sparklers. The worst thing he could do with them is draw a poor picture of a penis in the air. "What are you doing?" Cora asked. Just in case we need to protect ourselves," Liam said. "We aren't alone here." "Court, we may not have time to argue about this. We should hurry," Anna said. Court glared at him, but reluctantly put her piece away. "Okay, before we go out there, we need to decide who will go up in what order, so we can move the most efficiently." Anna pointed at Martina. You'll go up first, then you'll help Mason up. After that, it'll go Court, then Liam, then me. That way one of us will be down there to keep everyone safe if he tries to attack us. Any objections?" Yeah. Why am I the second to last person to go up?" Liam asked. "Because you're expendable," Court answered. "No," Anna corrected. "It's because you're the heaviest one here. And it'll be a much faster process if there are 3 of us up there. And because you're a criminal and our top priority is protecting the innocent." "I have a different objection," I started just as Liam was about to start speaking again. All eyes turned to me. Well, I probably need the most help getting up, and I'll probably be the least help helping people." I felt just a little embarrassed by what I was saying. But I also felt like now wasn't the time to let any semblance of masculinity I have get in the way of being the most efficient. Both Cora and Anna were in significantly better shape than I was on account of needing to for their jobs, and even Martina regularly exercised, while the most physical activity I participated in was flipping pages, walking, and everything that goes on at work. Along with that, the genetic lottery hadn't done me any favors by blessing me with an extremely thin frame and no muscles to speak on. If I live through whatever is about to happen next, I need to start working out. Along with that, I continued, if something does happen, I have the highest chance of actually surviving the smog. All you guys need to do is cover me if he comes up. And maybe one of you two, I gestured to Anna and Court, could also give someone a boost onto the ceiling to help things go faster. But I still want to go up before Liam. "Oh, come on, man," he complained. No, he does kind of have a fair point. I think that would be the fastest way to get through this, which increases our odds of all making it. And while I would rather not have to bet on our ability to cover him, I think it might be our best bet. "Are you sure?" Court asked. Anna reluctantly nodded. "Okay." Court pulled up the back of her shirt and pulled out a handgun. She messed around with it for a second before handing it to me. "There, the safety is off. We will still need to pull back the hammer to fire." I hesitantly took it. "Thanks," I said, praying I wouldn't have to use it. After that, we started getting ready to try to make our escape. Anna picked up the nightstand and carried it over to the door. I put my hand on the doorknob, prepping myself to open the door. We all took a collective breath, mentally preparing ourselves for what was about to happen. Now, before we continue, I feel like I should do some quick scaling for everyone. The lip of the roof is about 9 feet above the hallway. The nightstand is 2.5 feet tall, meaning that whoever goes first is going to have to jump then pull themselves up. Now with that out of the way, I yanked the door and they all spilled out into the walkway, working as fast as they could. Anna put the nightstand down against the wall, then cupped her hands together, letting Court step into them before getting boosted up to the point where Court could grab a hold of the roof. Martina stepped up onto the nightstand and jumped, barely managing to get her fingertips onto the roof. I stepped out of the room, ready for my turn. Simultaneously, the metallic clang, 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 clang of footsteps came charging up the stairs. I turned to see the man bursting out of the smog onto the walkway, sprinting right at us. A gunshot sounded off as the smog that clung to his shoulder exploded away from his body. The bullet passed straight through him, not slowing him down at all. "Mason, hurry!" Anna yelled. But before I had the chance to do so much as turn around, I heard a high-pitched scream behind me. I felt 2 hands on my back, and I was pushed forward. Did Liam just seriously push me? This next part happened over the span of a few seconds. It collided into me and jerked my body to the right, throwing us both over the railing. With surprisingly fast reflexes, for me at least, I caught a hold of the walkway. And then immediately slipped. We hit the ground and I landed right on top of him. I squeezed my eyes shut, expecting the worst. But then, nothing happened. Oh yeah, me being able to survive was entirely part of the plan. I heard the shouts of my friends and Liam, but something about the smog muffled the sound. I rolled off of him and jumped to my feet, intending to run back and get up onto the roof. As soon as I took a step, my face met the ground. My head whipped around to see him holding onto my ankle with his dead, cold hands. He started dragging me back towards him. "Nope," I said, my own voice muffled. Using my other leg, I started kicking his fingers as hard as I could. After the first few kicks, I felt his finger slip just enough that my ankle escaped his grip. I got back onto my feet and booked it back to the stairs. I heard him get up and sprint after me. Just as I reached the bottom step, he jumped over the stair railing, landing almost midway up the stairs. His torn up lips turned up into a smile, so it looked like he was giving me a look that said, "Yeah, I just did that." I spun on my heels without hesitation and started running for the gate. At this point I knew that I had no chance of actually outrunning this thing, but I also realized that my options were very limited. I could also feel my clothes start to melt away in the smog, so I could only think about how long I had left before I started to go with it. It only took him a matter of seconds to catch up and pounce on me. We hit the ground rolling, and even though I put my best effort in, he still ended up on top, pinning me to the ground. "Now, I know what you're thinking," I said, trying to catch my breath. "Should I do some terrible things to this man in front of me?" The answer... I stopped speaking, because whatever I was looking at was way more interesting than whatever I was about to say. Smog started leaking out of the body, but it was thicker and a darker shade of purple, and it clung to his skin like an Iron Man suit of disease. Well, that was unpleasant to watch. The smog suit peeled away from his body, causing the corpse to go limp. It fell against me, giving me a fleeting moment of hope as I realized I was no longer being pinned to the ground. But that hope immediately vanished as soon as I realized that the person-shaped smog was still above me. Now, I know what you're thinking. It didn't give me a chance to say it all again. Instead, the smog person lowered his body onto me. I could feel the diseased air pushing its way into my body, entering through my nose, ears, eyes, mouth, and every pore on my body. All in all, not the worst feeling. It felt like having an IV in, just everywhere. But that's when the memories started flooding into my brain. It felt like I was remembering my own life. As this thing started infecting my body, I struggled to try and retain my individuality from this creature. The memories played in reverse, starting with this thing scouting out the motel still in Court's dad's body, taking notice of how isolated it was from the rest of the world. For some reason I felt an insatiable desire to have me, which let me just say is a really weird feeling to have when you're already me, but also slowly having your brain taken over. From there it flashed back to the last time this happened. Now I was in the body of old John Hoover, the old librarian from the elementary school. He had gone missing in the virus incident previous to this one. I was walking up to a house that I simultaneously recognized as Court's, but it also felt completely new to me. I, pick- I picked it at random like I had every other time until this most recent time at the motel. I had a bat in my hands, and the smog was heavy in the air. I could barely see, but I could feel the smog as it moved over the town, letting me be acutely aware of where everything was. I hefted the bat and swung, shattering the window after only a few swings. The smog poured into the house, completely filling the bottom story. I moved over to the staircase. They always hide on the second story. That thought wasn't mine, but it felt like it was. I crouched, hiding in the smog just under where the stairs met the second story. I waited as I heard someone rushing to check what the cause of the sound was. It was a man that I was all too familiar with, but was also a complete stranger. Court's dad came up to the edge of the stairs, looking down into the smog. He muttered something to himself, but it didn't matter what. My arm shot out, grabbing him by the ankle. I tripped and dragged him into the smog. It all happened so fast that he didn't even have time to call for help. From there, what happened to me happened to Court's dad. More memories flashed through my brain. The person that was infected before John Hoover infecting him, then the memories of the person that infected that person being infected. This went back decades. And all I could glean from this was that this thing was some kind of parasite. It needed a body to live. It fed off our bodies. Without one, it wouldn't last very long. Which would have been great information if it wasn't for the fact that it, for some unknown reason, wanted me for its next meal. It stood up, pulling my body along like it was a puppet on strings. I was still conscious and aware of what was happening, but it was a struggle to remain so. I was now a passenger in my own body, and this thing was steering the ship. I did it. I actually did it! For a moment there I thought I was going to have to settle for another body, but this one will do me much better than the rest. Even when it thought of my voice. At that moment I heard the muffled voice of Liam yelling something. What's that idiot yelling now? I couldn't tell if that was my thought, its thought, or our thought at that moment. I stretched out my hand towards where I was guessing the group was situated on the rooftop. The smog cleared, giving me a clear line of sight to Liam. He was crouched on the edge of the roof, looking down at me, a sparkler in hand. The tip had been lit, and the small sparks of fire were sparking off of it. What is that idiot doing? I'm pretty sure that was my thought. But then, the completely unexpected happened. And let me say, in all my time working at this little dumpy motel, the place where mirror gods, clones, and plants with the nose of dogs are only seen as a little bit weird, this was the first time in a long time I've been surprised by something. Once the little spark reached the end of the sparkler, the tip shot off like a rocket. A ball of fire the size of my fist flew straight at me. Shit! Shit! The ball of fire hit me right in the stomach like a firework, throwing me at least 5 yards backwards, right out of the smog person. The parts of it that had entered my body were yanked out by the force. I hit the ground and rolled. I ended up laying on my back. I slowly pushed myself up and groaned. It felt like I had been on a bad roller coaster. So more nausea-inducing than fun. But I barely had any time to recover before I saw the smog creature reform into a human shape and start to come my way. I quickly pushed myself to my feet and prepared to run. Where? I had no clue, but anywhere was better than letting that thing back inside my brain. Another one of Liam's fireworks crashed into the ground right at his feet. The explosion caused it to disperse again. I think that's my cue to leave. I tried to think of some quippy one-liner to try and put down the creature for having tried to infect my body like that. The only thing I could come up with was what I come up with in most social situations. A blank. So instead, I took that as my chance to leave. I sprinted towards the stairs, hearing another firework go off as I ascended the steps. I burst out of the smog and onto the walkway. Cor and Anna were waiting on the rooftop right where I emerged, their arms outstretched and ready to grab me. I jumped and grabbed onto them, letting them pull me up. Once I was up, I collapsed onto my back as I desperately tried to catch my breath. Once I was able to breathe normally again, I sat and looked at Liam, who was currently firing another round of sparklers into the smog. Where did you get those? I asked him. He started lighting another sparkler, taking aim at where the smog was shifting in strange patterns. So that's how they knew where we were. I was on my way to rob you when some weird guy stopped me. He told me that if I wanted to cause some real trouble, I should take these. But now that I'm like, the hero and everything, I won't get arrested for all this, right? He looked over to Anna and Cor, who were both nodding. As soon as he looked away, they both started vigorously shaking their heads. You said a strange guy gave those to you. Who was he? I don't know. What did he look like? I don't know. You don't remember what he looks like? Listen, Mason, I remember the important stuff, okay? He offered me explosives. I took them. Have no reason to remember nothing else. Oh, Okay. Martina moved to sit next to me and asked, "You okay? What happened in there?" "Oh, you know, the usual. Chased by a zombie, then the evil smog controlling him tried to possess me, so now I basically know most of the thing's history. I'm pretty sure that if Liam keeps going, it'll die. So that's the good part of today." "Nice." After that, we sat there for a while, just watching Liam shoot sparkler after sparkler into the smog, until eventually he ran out. He stood up and stretched his back and legs. He had been kneeling there for close to an hour. He came over and sat next to Martina. "Well, that was awesome," he said to no one specifically. Then he looked over and said specifically to me, "Hey Mason, that's me. You know you're almost naked, right?" I looked down at myself, and he was in fact correct. Except for the few remaining bits of clothes that had once been my shirt, I was completely naked. And even the shirt that I did have left was burnt from where Liam had shot me. I also had a huge burn mark on my stomach. The skin had been burnt a harsh color of red, and was beginning to peel off. Well, that's probably not good. Hang on, that's not important right now. Why didn't anyone tell me sooner? Anna looked away, her face going red. "I thought it would be weird to bring it up." "I was waiting for you to notice," said Court. "I thought it was funny that you hadn't noticed," said Martina. Liam took off his shirt and handed it to me. "Here, cover up your schlong." "Thanks, Liam." "No one wants to see it." Ouch. I think. I wrapped his shirt around my waist, covering up my sensitive bit. After that, we sat there talking for the next couple of hours, before we noticed that the smog was starting to recede. We all went quiet as we watched. It took about an hour, but by the end of it, the smog was completely gone. To me, this meant that either the thing was dead, or for the first time, it went away early. I like to believe that it's dead. That makes me feel a lot better. We all helped each other get down off the roof, and we went to work cleaning up the room we had been staying in, collecting any of our miscellaneous possessions that we had left in the room. Then Anna and Court tackled and cuffed Liam, throwing him into the back of the police cruiser. We all said our goodbyes and they left. I checked our work schedule to see that Martina and I were scheduled for today, so I went to the laundry room where I kept a spare change of clothes that had somehow survived this whole ordeal and changed out of Liam's shirt. I clipped on a spare name tag and got to work at the front desk, where I'm writing out this post. JJ and Joshua should be here in a few hours to replace us, but until then, we're stuck here. I would have been fine getting back to work, business as usual, but something was bothering me. Why did that thing want my body? There are other people who work here who mostly have healthier and stronger bodies than I do, so why me? I feel like I should try and compartmentalize this specific question in a distant corner of my mind. But I suppose this is the end of this post. I'll update you all when the weirdness starts up again, but until then, I'll talk to you all again soon.